Welcome, I'm James Ezimoha. You're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. The World Health Organization declares Ebola outbreak in the DRC a public health emergency. US President Donald Trump says the clock is ticking for Iran as peace process stalls. And at least 4 people are killed in Russia as Ukraine launches retaliatory strikes. At least 87 people have died in the latest Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo as the World Health Organization declares the crisis an international public health emergency. Meanwhile, neighboring Uganda has increased surveillance following imported cases linked to the virus.
Health authorities in Central Africa are intensifying efforts to contain a growing Ebola outbreak in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo, as neighbouring Uganda steps up surveillance following imported cases linked to the virus. Emergency treatment centres are being prepared in DR Congo's Ituri province as the World Health Organization declared the Ebola outbreak an international public health emergency. Africa Centres for Disease Control and Prevention says at least 336 suspected and confirmed infections and 87 deaths have been recorded so far in the country's 17th Ebola outbreak since 1976. Health teams are working in Bunia, Rwampara and Mongwalu to isolate patients and trace contacts in a region already struggling with insecurity and limited healthcare access. DR Congo's health minister urged residents to seek medical help quickly.
The sooner we take the patient in for care, the sooner we treat them, the sooner we will stop the movement, what we call the spread of the virus. So this is not a mystical disease. Make yourself known. Make yourself known so that you can be taken care of and so that we can prevent the disease from spreading. That is really the message. Treatment is free. Come and get treated.
Regional concern has also spread into Uganda, where authorities confirmed a fatal imported case involving a Congolese man who had travelled to Kampala. The World Health Organization warns that cross-border movement and weak surveillance systems could complicate containment efforts. Some residents fear the outbreak could disrupt travel and daily life, while others called for stronger awareness campaigns and preventive measures.
It creates a challenge with the travel element because then Uganda lies at a risk of facing a travel ban, and for a person like me who is engaged in travels here and there, if we are put on a travel ban, very many things in the background get disorganized and it is not good for the country as a whole. I would like the government to, one, quickly spread awareness about Ebola and how it is spread, to break down this information even for the layest of people to understand, but also start to institute measures to avoid the spread of Ebola in Kampala and Uganda as a whole, so that there is a feeling of safeness, of security against this disease of Ebola.
Someone who works in Kampala, I didn't receive well the news of Ebola outbreak in Uganda because I work in an environment where I meet many people every day. So it puts me on a high risk of getting also Ebola.
Health authorities across the region say surveillance, contact tracing and public awareness efforts are now being intensified as officials work to prevent the outbreak from spreading further beyond eastern DR Congo and Uganda.
Now, US President Donald Trump is ramping up pressure on Iran after a drone strike sparked a fire at a nuclear plant in the United Arab Emirates. The latest tensions come as reported peace proposals between Washington and Tehran appear increasingly strained.
Regime's conventional ballistic missile.
US President Donald Trump has issued a new warning to Iran, saying in a Truth Social post that the clock is ticking and urging Iranian leaders to get moving fast. The post came after a drone strike caused a fire at the Baraka nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates. Officials in Abu Dhabi say an investigation is underway and stressed the UAE has the right to respond to what it called terrorist attacks. Saudi Arabia also says it intercepted 3 drones entering from Iraqi airspace and warned it would take necessary operational measures to protect its sovereignty and security. The developments come as progress appears stalled in efforts to end the US-Israeli war with Iran and restart shipping in the Gulf. Axios also reports Trump is expected to meet top national security advisors on Tuesday to discuss options for military action regarding Iran. Meanwhile, Iran's semi-official Fars news agency reports that the United States has outlined 5 conditions in response to Tehran's latest peace proposal, citing an informed source. According to the report, the conditions include refusing to pay compensation or war damages, Iran transferring 400 kilograms of enriched uranium to the United States, and Iran being allowed to keep only 1 nuclear facility operational. The report also says Washington rejected unfreezing Iranian assets, while ceasefires on various fronts would be conditional on the start of negotiations. Fars adds that Iran has demanded an end to hostilities, the lifting of sanctions, compensation for war damage, and recognition of its sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz as conditions for a second round of talks. There has been no official response from either Iran or the United States regarding the report.
Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump spoke on Sunday about developments involving Iran. Israeli media said the leaders discussed the possibility of renewed conflict with Iran, along with ongoing regional tensions. After the call, Trump warned that Iran should move quickly in negotiations, saying time is of the essence, while also suggesting he believes a deal is still possible. The talks come as diplomatic efforts continue, with no announcement of decisions or timelines for any military action. Now, G7 finance ministers meet in Paris on Monday amid growing concerns over rising public debt and volatility in global bond markets following recent tensions linked to the Iran conflict. Officials discuss the economic impact of the conflict as investors worry that higher energy prices could increase inflation and lead to further interest rate hikes. Also, bond markets from Asia to the United States extended losses during Monday trading. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent urged G7 countries to strengthen sanctions enforcement against Iran.
We come in at an important time. We're here to discuss the global economy, global imbalances, critical minerals, terror financing. I'm just back from Beijing with President Trump for a very successful visit where we talked the geopolitics, trade, and the leaders spent a great deal of time together. Tomorrow we will also be discussing sanctions and terror finance, and we call upon all our G7 and indeed all of our allies and the rest of the world to follow the sanctions regime so that we can crack down on the illicit finance that is fueling the Iranian war machine and get this money back to the Iranian people. So thank you all.
Now, Russia has responded to one of Ukraine's largest drone attacks on Moscow with overnight missile and drone strikes targeting several regions across Ukraine. The latest escalation comes after Russian officials described the Ukrainian barrage as one of the biggest aerial attacks on the capital since this war began.
Russia launched overnight drone and missile strikes on Ukraine, targeting the southern city of Odessa and the southeastern city of Dnipro, Ukrainian officials said Monday. Authorities reported at least 12 people were injured in attacks across central and southern regions of the country. In Odessa, a major Black Sea export port, drones struck residential buildings as well as a school and kindergarten. Regional officials said an 11-year-old boy and a 59-year-old man were injured. In Dnipro, Regional Governor Alexander Hanzha said at least 9 people were wounded in the attacks. The latest Russian strikes come after Ukraine carried out one of its largest attacks on the Moscow region since the start of the war more than 4 years ago. Russian authorities said at least 4 people were killed. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the large-scale drone operation was a response to continued Russian attacks on Ukraine.
The Russians need to think about their refineries, their oil facilities, their enterprises, and not about how to disrupt the lives of other peoples in Ukraine, Moldova, or any other neighboring country. Today, the activity indicators show that our proactive operations per day are higher than those of the Russians, and this is a very serious result. We will increase all forms of supply for our army, drones, ground robots, shells, all resources to maintain proper protection and our active frontline operations.
Russian officials claimed more than 1,000 Ukrainian drones were intercepted over the past 24 hours. Russia's defense ministry said it intercepted 556 drones overnight and into Sunday morning, with another 30 drones shot down after dawn. According to the ministry, the interceptions took place across 14 Russian regions, as well as annexed Crimea and over the Black and Azov Seas, marking one of the largest Ukrainian aerial assaults of the war so far.
Now, Beijing is anticipating the official visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin, scheduled for 19th to 20th May. During his visit, Putin will hold talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
During the Russian president's visit to China, discussions will focus on bilateral relations and the current state and future prospects of Russian-Chinese ties, particularly in trade and economic cooperation, which consistently exceeds $200 billion. The two sides will also address the international agenda, exchanging views on key global and regional issues, as well as recent interactions between China and the United States. In addition, humanitarian cooperation will form a significant part of the discussions, highlighted by the joint launch of the Cross Years of Education between Russia and China, aimed at enhancing academic and scientific exchanges. Following the negotiations, a joint statement by the two heads of state, along with a number of bilateral agreements ranging from intergovernmental to interdepartmental level, is expected to be signed. Throughout his presidency, Vladimir Putin has visited China approximately 20 times. His most recent visit took place in late August and early September 2025, resulting in the signing of more than 20 documents, including a memorandum on the construction of the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline. The project, planned since 2006, has faced delays due to disagreements over commercial terms. Putin's upcoming visit to China is attracting heightened international attention. It comes shortly after US President Donald Trump's recent trip to China, during which he spent 3 days in the country from 13 to 15 May. Trump announced the conclusion of several what he described as fantastic deals, including China's agreement to purchase 200 Boeing aircraft. Putin's visit may mark the first time Beijing has hosted the leaders of two major world powers within a single month outside the framework of international summits or multilateral events. Abukhaya Jafarova, A News, Beijing, China.
Now, at least 5 people, including 2 children, were killed and several others wounded in Israeli strikes, according to Lebanese health officials. Strikes hit multiple towns, with reports of additional attacks and drone activity in other areas. Drones were also seen flying over Beirut and other surrounding areas. The strikes came despite the ceasefire extension aimed at reducing tensions along the border. Now, the U.S. Africa Command says it carried out fresh airstrikes against Islamic State targets in northeastern Nigeria on Sunday in coordination with the Nigerian government. It added that no U.S. or Nigerian forces were harmed during the operation. The strikes follow an early operation on Saturday that killed Abu Bilal al-Minuki, described as the second in command of the Islamic State globally in the northeast of the country. All right, after the break, we'll take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay with us.
Moi, Luis Moreno Campo, déclare solennellement.
We've seen remarkable developments between Baku and Yerevan.
We are against all of this kind of peace.
Russia does not want Pashinyan to win. Russia wants perpetual conflict.
A region that's in conflict or in tension is better for their ability to play a role.
Russian oligarchs are less about money and more about political influence. Russia can make its own interventions through online postings.
Que je remplirai mes devoirs et exercerai mes attributions de procureur de la Cour pénale internationale.
Money in politics everywhere is corrupting influence, but when it becomes weaponized by a foreign power.
The main thing we have money. Too much resources, too much money.
The main topic is to change Pashinyan.
They have boss and big boss. Big boss which is in Russia.
L'impartialité et en toute conscience.
We are for pressuring Pashinyan. We are organizing rallies on the streets.
Et que je respecterai le caractère confidentiel de ces enquêtes.
They are election time. And election time is everything binary.
Nosotros tenemos que lograr que remuevan a Pashinyan.
Welcome back to A News. Iran and Pakistan reviewed bilateral ties and latest developments in the Iran-US stalled peace negotiations mediated by Islamabad, while Tehran and Washington have refused to give tangible concessions amid a shaky ceasefire. Our correspondent brings us more from Tehran.
Pakistan's Interior Minister Mohsen Raza Naqvi visited Tehran over the weekend, during which he met his counterpart, as well as President Masoud Pezeshkian and Parliamentary Speaker and top negotiator with the U.S., Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. According to official sources, the two sides discussed security cooperation to promote cross-border trade, as well as the latest regional developments, including the blocked Iran-US peace talks mediated by Pakistan. President Pezeshkian praised neighboring Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iraq for preventing terrorists and invading countries from misusing their territory against Iran, and especially appreciated Pakistan for its mediation efforts resulting in a ceasefire. As the Iran-US standoff is escalating, while they have refused to provide the other side with noticeable concessions for the resumption of peace talks, diplomacy has been at work amid a fragile ceasefire. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi held phone calls with his counterparts from South Korea, Qatar, France, and Turkey over the weekend on bilateral ties and latest regional developments, including the current diplomatic processes. The calls were made after he returned from a visit to India to take part in the BRICS ministerial meeting last week. On the sidelines of the New Delhi meeting, Araghchi urged the U.S. to seek a solution to its dispute with Iran beyond the military option. And in a new sign of escalation, the state-owned IRIB TV has been broadcasting programs on weapon training, from light machine guns to portable RPG launchers. A senior official of the state broadcaster defended the programs, saying they serve the purpose of educating cultural and social responsibility as the country is still under threat of a renewed Israel-US war. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting from downtown Tehran for A News.
Now, Pakistan's Interior Minister Mohsen Naqvi met Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian and Parliament Speaker in Tehran during a two-day visit focused on regional dialogue and peace efforts. The meetings came after Pakistan-mediated talks between Iran and the United States were suspended last week following disagreements over recent proposals. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi earlier said the mediation process had not failed, but described it as being in difficulty due to what he'd called contradictory messages from Washington. Now, 36 countries just signed up to prosecute Russia for its war in Ukraine, but Georgia said no. Tbilisi says the EU's own inconsistent attitude is to blame. Ani Nikolashvili has more.
On May 15th, in Moldova's capital, a historic vote took shape. 34 Council of Europe member states plus Australia, Costa Rica and the European Union formally adopted the enlarged partial agreement to establish a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. The tribunal, designed to fill a gap the ICC cannot, prosecuting senior Russian political and military leaders for the decision to invade Ukraine, represents a new chapter in international accountability. But 10 Council of Europe members stayed out. That list includes EU members Hungary, Slovakia, Bulgaria and Malta, 4 Balkan states, and from the South Caucasus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey. Armenia and Azerbaijan are presently pursuing their own peace agenda, with the actual agreement having already been initialed, yet Yerevan is still deeply connected with the Russia-dominated Eurasian Economic Union. Georgian Foreign Minister Makabachorishvili said that the attitude of some EU member states towards Georgia prevents Tbilisi from making decisions that could create additional risks. The government also points out that Georgia has joined roughly 1,000 international resolutions supporting Ukraine, framing the tribunal refusal not as a pro-Russia move, but as a response to what it sees as EU inconsistency. Critics at home call that reasoning hollow. A country under active occupation, they argue, cannot afford selective solidarity. Then there is Hungary. Even after its pro-European political earthquake this April, Budapest still did not join. The tribunal will move forward, but the map of who joined and who did not tells its own story about where Europe's fracture lines still run. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Water security is once again under the spotlight in Central Asia. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan are holding talks over water distribution ahead of the summer irrigation season as climate pressures and rising demand increase concerns over shortages across the region. A correspondent reports from Kazakhstan.
Water is once again moving to the top of Central Asia's agenda as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan begin talks over the upcoming irrigation season. With summer temperatures rising, the focus is on one question: how to manage shared water resources at a time of growing pressure across the region. One of the key issues is water supply through the interstate Dostok Canal, which irrigates the Maktaral and Jetisar districts in southern Kazakhstan's Turkestan region, one of the country's main agricultural areas. Officials from the three countries are discussing how the Bahri Tojik reservoir will operate between June and August 2026, the most demanding period of the irrigation season. Kazakhstan is represented by Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation Nurjan Nurjigitov, who says fair distribution of transboundary water remains a priority for countries sharing the Sirdarya River basin. The talks come as water shortages deepen across Central Asia. Scientists warn that agricultural water demand could rise by as much as 30% by 2030, while experts say growing shortages may also affect energy supply, food production and public health. At the same time, Kazakhstan is testing new ways to reduce drought risks. In Turkestan, authorities have launched a weather modification project aimed at increasing rainfall. making Kazakhstan the first country in Central Asia to put this technology into practical use. International estimates suggest such methods can increase precipitation by up to 20%, helping improve water supply across more than 911,000 hectares of farmland, with a potential economic impact of around $75 million a year. Ariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Now, Ukraine has proposed launching a new regional dialogue platform with Central Asia focused on trade, logistics and direct cooperation. Our correspondent Severa Japova has more from Tashkent.
Ukraine is seeking to strengthen ties with Central Asia through a proposed Ukraine plus Central Asia dialogue platform focused on economic cooperation, transport connectivity and regional dialogue. In an interview with Times of Central Asia, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha said that the initiative would focus on direct dialogue without intermediaries and would not be directed against any country. According to him, Kyiv sees growing strategic importance in Central Asia as the region expands its role in global transport, trade and energy networks. A key priority for Kyiv is participation in the Trans-Caspian International Transport Road, or Middle Corridor, linking China, Central Asia, the South Caucasus, the Black Sea and the European Union. Ukraine says its Black Sea ports could serve as an important western gateway for trade flows along the road. Kazakhstan was described as Ukraine's key regional partner. The minister noted that intergovernmental consultations and business dialogue between the two countries have resumed after a long pause, with growing Ukrainian business interests in agriculture, engineering, food processing and IT sectors. The foreign minister also highlighted humanitarian cooperation, saying Kazakhstan has provided around 600 tons of aid to Ukraine since the start of the war, and has hosted Ukrainian children for rehabilitation programs. Ukraine says it sees Central Asia as an increasingly important partner for long-term economic and regional cooperation. It is Severa Rajab reported from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
All right, now we head to the venue of the 13th World Urban Forum, one of the largest international platforms dedicated to sustainable cities and urban development taking place in Baku, Azerbaijan, with our own Andy Miyok, who is at the venue.
Well, a very warm welcome from A News studio here at the World Urban Forum taking place in the Azerbaijani capital. It's been a packed day here in Baku, and as you might hear, the announcer is still calling out events going on here. We have a lot of coverage for you, but let's start at the very beginning with the opening ceremony that marked the official start and beginning of the 13th World Urban Forum. Let's have a look how it looked.
President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev and Executive Director of the United Nations Human Settlements Programme, Anna Claudia Rosbach, welcomed the heads of state and government, as well as the heads of delegations participating in the opening session of WUF 13. Then, a cultural program dedicated to urban development and the history of Azerbaijan's cities and regions was presented. President Ilham Aliyev delivered an opening speech and stated that Azerbaijan's location between East and West has long been reflected in its architecture, and that the country is proud of this heritage.
Since 2022, we, together with UN Habitat, held 3 national urban fora in Azerbaijan, in Agdam, Zengilan and Khankendi, the cities which were under occupation for many years. And today, organizing the global gathering, we once again demonstrate our strong commitment to urban planning, urban development, to our agenda to make life of the people better, and to provide our population with all necessary means in order to feel themselves comfortably.
United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres addressed the WUF13 opening ceremony with a video message.
The Secretary-General, I'm proud that the Pact for the Future and the Doha Political Declaration recognize housing as a priority. And I welcome the upcoming 10-year review of the new urban agenda. Now is the time to put housing at the center of sustainable development by expanding access to housing that is adequate, safe and affordable, transforming informal settlements and slums, and addressing inequalities that inflame social tensions. Housing is a human right and fundamental for human dignity.
President of the UN Habitat Assembly, Nga Ko-ming, urged leaders to pay greater attention to urban issues.
I ask you today, when you look at your city maps, do not just look at roads and zones. See the faces. See the young entrepreneur in a slum who needs a legal address to start a business. See the families in the coastal cities at risk from rising sea levels. Let us commit to human-centered urbanism. Let us bridge the $5.4 trillion annual financing gap for climate-resilient infrastructure.
Executive Director of UN Habitat, Anna Claudia Rosbach, in her turn, also noted that housing is becoming a central policy priority across all regions.
The level of interest and participation in WUF 13 has been truly exceptional. Never before has a forum of this nature brought together such a vast and diverse global audience, reflecting the growing recognition that housing and sustainable urban development are central to our collective future. So, let us remind ourselves that collectively we are not starting from scratch.
Rosbach emphasized that WUF13 is an opportunity to focus on solutions and ensure housing for all.
Well, following the official opening ceremony of the World Urban Forum, the spotlight quickly shifted to the Leaders Summit. Heads of state and government took the podium to address the critical threats facing modern urban development, ranging from a massive global housing deficit to severe climate impacts. Here are the highlights.
The 13th session of the World Urban Forum in Baku has brought global leaders together to address a critical reality. The rapid growth of world cities is now directly impacting global stability and security. Speaking at the high-level session, Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev delivered a warning about the rising global housing.
Today, almost 3 billion people worldwide lack adequate housing. More than 1 billion of them live in informal settlements and slums, while more than 300 million people have no shelter at all. Put it simply, urbanization is becoming a critical factor that directly impacts global stability and security.
The rapid transformation of the host nation itself was highly commended during the session. Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić pointed to Azerbaijan's development as a prime global example of what targeted urban planning can achieve.
Whenever I come to Baku, whenever I come to Azerbaijan, and it happens at least once a year, I see big changes. I see a lot of progress that you Azerbaijani people and President Aliyev did together for the sake of your people and for the sake of your country. That's why Baku look like the very best places in today's world. I very much admire him.
However, the forum also highlighted that urban challenges differ heavily by geography. Kyrgyz President Sadir Japarov shifted the global spotlight to the unique vulnerabilities of mountain cities.
Unfortunately, glacier melting, climate change, population migration, and increasing pressure on ecosystems are negatively affecting cities located in high mountain and foothill regions. We propose considering the establishment of an international association of mountain cities.
While adapting to the future, leaders argued that modernization must not erase the past. Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze stressed that contemporary urban planning must protect cultural heritage.
Our initiatives are guided by a commitment to the preservation of traditional Georgian architectural heritage. We believe that modernization must not come at the cost of history.
The broader agenda of WUF13 is just getting underway. Discussions on housing finance, climate resilience and urban innovation will continue in Baku until Friday.
And our reporters kept busy throughout the day. A News' Leila Rahimli got an exclusive and spoke to the president of the United Nations Habitat Assembly. Now, he says the biggest problem to solving the crisis is the lack of political will. Here's what else he had to say.
The biggest challenge is that there's a lack of strong political will. It is always important that we can have a good plan. End of the day, it is actually the execution and implementation of the plan. So what has been achieved must be implemented, and we can create a measurable impact for all. Never forget that house is actually the home, and home is the heaven for many, a safe sanctuary for many. So let's.
As part of the World Urban Forum, an African ministerial meeting is set to take place, bringing together officials from across Africa responsible for housing and urban development to talk on urbanization challenges across the continent, as well as possible solutions. Our Aytan Shukurova spoke with several participants. Here's what they told her.
It's an opportunity for our different countries to be able to go over the African Union Forum statement and to also share our vision individually in individual countries as far as the Vision 2063. Which is mostly being able to build focus on climate control, resilient homes, and making sure that a home is more of a dignified tool rather than just an asset for the future. One of the biggest assets of Mali is the land itself. So we are quite a big country with nearly 1.2 million square kilometers of land. And our goal is to be able to find financial partners which are going to help us in the development of affordable housing for all in Mali. So we have the know-how, we have the land itself, which is an asset. So it's being able to to give access to those affordable homes to our different citizens.
I'm working in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we are here with the Minister of Urban Development of this country. The main issues there are informal settlement, issue of mobility in the urban areas, and also the issue of infrastructure. On those issues, the discussion are going to be around financial, but also on technical issues, the development of the urban plans, because there is a lot of issue of land occupation and land planning. UN Habitat, as the host of this session, has a lot of expertise also to offer to countries on the technical aspects. We also have partners here like the African Development Bank, the World Bank, and also the private sector that can also collaborate with the countries to finance the issue of informal settlement, but also housing issues and also the planning sector.
And for a wrap of the day so far, with all the essential numbers and data, we go to our Nuray Mustafa, who filed this World Urban Forum report.
World Urban Forum 13 Urban Expo, taking place at the Baku Olympic Stadium, brings together countries, cities and international organizations from around the world. The exhibition, officially opened today, showcases innovative solutions for sustainable and inclusive urban living. More than 20,000 visitors are expected to attend the event. The Urban Expo presents practical solutions to urban challenges related to housing, transport, energy, waste management and climate change. More than 200 organizations from 66 countries are participating in the exhibition. One of the key venues of the expo is the UN Habitat Pavilion, where visitors can explore various presentations and take part in interactive activities focused on urban life and housing issues. The Business and Innovation Hub features innovative technologies and solutions in urban planning and housing. The venue also includes a dedicated startup pavilion and hosts a range of discussions on urban development. The Urban Expo also hosts panel discussions and meetings throughout the program. One such discussion held at the pavilion of the South Enjai platform focused on water scarcity and the management of water resources. Speakers from Pakistan, Lebanon, Nigeria and Oman took part in the panel. Discussions centered on the protection and effective management of water resources and growing urbanization and climate change. The speakers also highlighted the importance of international cooperation in ensuring water security.
Now all of our members that are in Baku and not in Baku have a platform to raise their voices, raise their concerns about their communities and provide solutions to the problems that they have. So just now we had an event with member organizations from Lebanon, from Pakistan, from Oman and from other countries where they voiced their concerns, specifically in, for example, Kenya and Nigeria, where they talked about water scarcity and drought.
So forum like this sensitizes people, creates awareness so that we are able to work together. We don't need to go anywhere else to say, come and help me build my bridge. You build good bridges. You can do it for us much easier than to go and borrow money somewhere else to come and do it. So that's why I put a lot of emphasis in this platform, because it's also inclusive. It's people-centered, and it's very inclusive. And so that is what I put emphasis on.
Meanwhile, the Urban Library section presents the latest research and urban planning and housing policy, including the World Cities Report 2026. And at the Urban Cinema venue, visitors can watch short films exploring urbanization and city life. Nuray Mustafa, Natiq Mehmedov, Zohrab Shirinov for A News.
Let's now hear some more thoughts from the participants here at the World Urban Forum in Baku. Some of them say stronger global cooperation and financial support are essentially needed to address the housing crisis. Some of the delegates also stress the importance of affordable housing, local building materials, and involving communities more directly in urban planning decisions. Here's more.
So what is key now is to work as a bloc and share ideas from other countries. How have they managed a breakthrough for this housing problem? I think now as a United Nations, we have to develop a fund which will assist those who are underprivileged. So as a bloc, as a unit now, we have to help each other. Those who are financially stable, the countries, then when there's a fund, we will then apply for assisting the citizens of the respective countries.
The first thing is the using local material like blocks, earth blocks, to build many houses, because using earth blocks bring low using carbon. And the second way is the low of cost, the cost of the housing. What we have heard is that when we use the local materials, we are bring down the prices of housing. That is why we have learned since 2 days in this forum.
That's why we're here, to make a claim that people have agency to shape their cities, and that policy and planners and municipalities should try to align with people's needs and hopefully have.
Well, joining me now at the World Urban Forum studio to delve deeper in what we could hear and see today is A News's Deputy Editor-in-Chief and my dear colleague Orhan Amasha. Orhan, thank you so much for joining me here at this special studio of ours. Now, this is another major UN event hosted by Azerbaijan here in Baku. We've seen a lot of events today, panels, sessions, of course, the opening ceremony. What stood out the most to you?
Well, what's very interesting about today is that today is the day of opening ceremony, but technically day two. Day one was yesterday. It was a very challenging day for very obvious climatic reasons. But today, I suppose, before telling you what I think about today's key developments, allow me to mention that there are three major developments around the world, which in terms of their scale, they stand first. One of them is UN General Assembly, is always taking place on an annual basis in New York. Second one is COP, basically a conference of parties to the UN Convention on Climate Change. And third one is World Urban Forum. So Azerbaijan effectively over the past, I think, 3 years, since 2.5 years, already hosted two of those three major occasions. Of course, naturally, UN General Assembly cannot be hosted by Azerbaijan for very understandable reasons. Today was a very interesting day. Of course, opening ceremony itself, in terms of choreography, was very fascinating spectacle to observe and examine. President Aliyev's speech, I think, was incredibly important and interesting. He talked extensively about Azerbaijan's rebuilding efforts in the deoccupied territory. It's very interesting, Andy, that Azerbaijan, as a result of First Karabakh War and its outcomes, faced this massive housing crisis because around 800,000, 1 million people, we take together IDPs, internally displaced persons, and also refugees who were expelled to leave modern-day Armenia as a result of that very conflict. Their arrival in rest of Azerbaijan, in particular, they need to house them in Baku and in Baku's vicinity, created a major housing crisis in the history of this nation. Now, Azerbaijan has been dealing with that problem, and deoccupation of the occupied territories created a qualitatively new challenge, and that challenge was a very positive challenge to reconstruct East Zangezur and Karabakh Economic Region of Azerbaijan. And green technology, sustainable urban development, climate sensitive and climate conscious rebuilding efforts have been the key elements applied there by Azerbaijani authorities, in particular, of course, by the State Committee on Urban Development and Architecture. So President Aliyev reflected on that in the clearest possible way. He said that the true owners of their land now are rebuilding and reviving. I think that was one of the most emotionally charged and substantive statements he made. But of course, the world is changing and changing dramatically. There is a strong connection between climatic problems that we are facing and the housing crisis. Because if to go back to those figures which have been mentioned on a number of occasions today, but it's still very important, 40% of human population does not have access to adequate housing. It's about 3 billion people around the world.
That's very concerning.
It's a matter of immense concern. It's not just the global south issue, really. In major mega cities like London, there's also affordable house problem because youngsters who have not reached certain financial self-sufficiency cannot afford living in London and in its outskirts. So it's not a global south problem per se. It's a wider problem, but it's of course more pronounced in global south. 1.1 billion population around the world lives in informal settlements. 300 million people are suffering from homelessness. And of course, you would say that these challenges require joint action, of course. But I think that what we observe in this World Urban Forum, we realize that instead of following the principle which has been followed before, so demolishing everything and rebuilding in terms of informal settlements and slum, we see the two-track policy. On one side, we see the improvement and refurbishment of slums, informal settlements themselves, and rebuilding efforts. I think this is going to be one of the major themes that will be discussed throughout the incoming days.
Obviously, Orhan, with such numbers, some 40% of the world's population in that situation, do you expect the World Urban Forum to come out with some recommendations, to come out with some ideas, kind of in the vein as did COP29?
Well, it's very fascinating. COP and World Urban Forum are different in that very respect, that this latter one, this congregation, is not supposed to produce sort of legally binding treaty-like sort of outcome. There's no sort of a World Urban Forum finance goal, as was the case back in Azerbaijan, November 2024, and as has been the case in the context of different COPs. But what we observe here, there are different assemblies, of course. All of them are related to particular type of stakeholders. We have governments coming together, we have civil society members coming together, and this joint closing session of assemblies is supposed to produce an outcome in the shape of a document, which then should be pursued by respective governments. It is very fascinating, Andy, that history of civilization is in many ways is a history of cities, and very much our future as a humanity will depend on how effectively the cities are governed, how they're interconnected, and how habitable they are, because a substantial majority of human civilization, in particular advanced part of human civilization, actually inhabit different cities. So we need to find a solution to that. We shouldn't treat these individual congregations as sort of result-oriented congregations in a very sort of a rustic sense of the word. But I see what will happen here, countries, governments, different stakeholders coming together and trying to formulate a roadmap on the basis of which something will happen, because although we don't expect any financial outcome, so we don't expect an NCKG type of World Urban Forum document which will say that certain amount of money should be allocated for the needs of certain countries. We don't expect that, but collaboration, global discussion should lead to some sort of a understanding of what should happen, because UN Habitat and the UN Habitat Chief Executive Director delivered a speech today. Of course, actually she's a lady of immense knowledge when it comes to social housing. Any outcome will emerge once we talk to each other, but it's very important that UN is still a very vital institution. Whatever criticism could be levied against UN, its relevant institutions, when it comes to affordable housing, dealing with the shortages of housing, UN has been incredibly important and effective in many parts of the world. And when I say many parts of the world, I mainly refer to those less developed parts of the global south.
Orhan, do you see this talking to each other, growing into working with each other? We here at A News had an opportunity to speak to so many delegates today. Even I spoke with the gentleman from Uzbekistan. He was talking about, among other things, the modernization, the digital infrastructure, the interconnectedness of Central Asia and with South Caucasus and with Europe. Is this platform an opportunity to get that cohesion, that regional and super-regional cooperation?
I mean, housing crisis is not simply about the lack of affordable housing. It's in many ways, it goes to the wider scope wherein you have connectivity, cities as sustainable urban settlements acting as nodes to the wider landscape. And during this World Urban Forum, one of the key subjects is going to be the more interconnected we are, the better opportunities will arise for the purpose of building a sustainable, climate-conscious urban settlements. So basically, Azerbaijan's example is a very good example in that particular context. What is happening in East Sengez and Karabakh economic regions, not just about the application of green technologies, building smart cities and so forth, it's also making sure that people are able to live there. People will only live in those parts of Azerbaijan or any part of the world if that territory is well connected to the rest of the country. You would never live in Shusha or in Khankandi if there's absolutely no connection between that part of Azerbaijan and the rest of the country. And that brings us to the concept of connectivity and digitalization. Digitalization serves two fundamental purposes. First of all, we live in the age of increasingly urbanized world, wherein population is going up, the number of people going up. So cities, urban settlements will be forced by sheer virtue of the increase in human population to absorb around 2 billion more people, additional 2 billion people in the course of the next decades. So that effectively means that for us to be able to make sure that our cities are habitable and livable, they must be well connected, because these people will be working. They'll be living in one part of the country, will be traveling to another part of the country in order to work. So in that particular sense, World Urban Forum brings together effectively climatic issues, because as a result of climate change, we expect that problems related to homelessness will increase, because many settlements, informal settlements, are very prone to climatic issues. When there's a thunderstorm, when there's a flooding, the first part of the country which is being subjected to that negative impact of climate change is those informal settlements. So to address this problem, you need to think in a multidimensional fashion. So you need to increase the quality of the urban settlement itself. You need to make sure that settlement is well connected with the rest of the country, and also, of course, transport should be better.
Well, Orhan, thank you so much for your in-depth analysis. Brilliant as always. And to you, our dear viewers, we are here in Baku, and we will be here in Baku for all the other days of the World Urban Forum. For now, that's all we can bring to you from our special studio, but join us tomorrow as well. Bye.